we're page 820. So I'm going to take you a bit of a ride today. And if you're able to follow, you follow it, but you'll certainly hear the depth of Torah, the consistency of Torah. So if okay. You notice at the beginning of Parsha it says, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kos ben Levi. Korach, the son of Yitzhar, son of Kos, son of Levi, V'dasan v'Aviram b'nei Elav, v'on ben Peles b'nei Ruvain. First pasuk. So you got Korach starts a fight. We said yesterday he's starting a fight because of the drive for prestige, the drive for honor. So the first question we have to deal with is that Korach starts off with him and Dasan and Aviram, who are the perpetual troublemakers. They've been the thorn in Moshe's side the entire time. And then there's another guy named On ben Peles. And the name Peles comes from the Hebrew word Pella, which is a miracle or a wonder. And the Medrash says because he had a miraculous occurrence. What was the miraculous occurrence? Well, what was the end of Korach and his followers? They got swallowed up in the earth. The earth opened up and they got swallowed, which you want to avoid. But On ben Peles doesn't appear in the rest of the story. He's mentioned in the beginning, and then we don't hear from this On ben Peles guy. We don't hear from him. So the Medrash says, well, Hakol mina isha. It all depends on the wife. It all comes from the wife. Why? The Medrash says there was once a guy who was a tzaddik, and he was married to a woman who was also a tzaddikus, and the two of them split up. And he married a wicked woman, and he became a Rasha, and she married a Rasha and turned the Rasha into a tzaddik. It comes from the wife. It's all. And that's what the Medrash says. All right, you got to make a little effort, but that's what the Medrash says. So it says over here, what happened to Korach? What triggered Korach off? In the previous Parsha, we had the situation where the Leviim were initiated into the service, and they were shaven completely bald. As part of the initiation, the Levies were in the initiation service. They were shaven completely bald. And then Aaron waved them. And so Mrs. Korach says to Korach, hey, look what's going on. And Korach was a Levi, so he was shaven also. So Mrs. Korach said to Korach, hey, what's going on over here? Moshe takes his brother, and he dresses his brother up like a bride who's getting married, because Aaron was wearing all the fancy garments of the Kohen Gadol. He wasn't a Levi, he was a Kohen Gadol. And you and the other Levium, he shaves like an egg, and he waves you around, and he's having a good time at your expense. So Korach says to her, yeah, but he did it to himself too. Moshe Rabbeinu shaved himself because Moshe himself was a Levi. Can I just ask everybody, put away the technology, just 1 second, put away all the technology or use it outside. It's not respectful for Torah to be distracted by technology. So Moshe himself was a Levi. Now Moshe himself got you. So Mrs. Korach says to her husband, he says, so yeah, but Moshe did it to himself too. So she says to Moshe, sure, when you do it to yourself, that's all part of the shtick. That's like when you're trying to get something, you're willing to do it to yourself because you're the guy who's starting off the trial. You're the guy who's pulling a shtick on somebody else. So you do it to yourself to get the other guy. She said it's like Samson. It's like Shimshon said, I'll go down with the Plishtim. And he pushed out the pillars. I'll die with them as long as I take them with me. So Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't mind because he's the one who's doing it, so he does it to himself. He probably did that in frat parties or something. You're willing to do it to yourself as long as you make the other guy look bad. So you do it to yourself. So Korach says to Mrs. Korach says, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You ought to start a rebellion. Okay. So Korach comes and he protests the situation. In the meantime, you got this guy On ben Peles. And On ben Peles was part of the group. And his wife says to On ben Peles, so the Medrash says, Korach's wife took him down. It was Korach's wife. That was his downfall, was his wife. And she gets swallowed up with him. On ben Peles was also part of the group. And Mrs. Peles said to On ben Peles, what's going on? Sometimes when a husband comes home, he's got that glint in his eye. And the wives could tell. Husband, what's going on? Oh, nothing. How was your day? Yeah, pretty good. What's going on? Oh, nothing. He starts eating supper. She goes, what's going on? Nothing. I just had an idea, if we pawned two of the children and took out a second loan, we could go for the big one. And the wife says, we're not going for the big one. We're not pawning any of the children. You're getting up tomorrow and you're going back to work and just to eat your supper and go behave. They could tell when you're up to, oh, nothing, oh, nothing. So, which is what keeps most of us out of prison. So she goes, oh, nothing. Yeah, I've had my share of oh, nothings also. So Mrs. Ben Pella says, what's going on? Oh, nothing. What's going on? Oh, they're just a rebellion. Who's rebelling? Korach. What's your problem? Well, I'm with them. So I understand what's in it. Why are you rebelling? Because we want to overthrow Moshe's leadership. What's in it for you? If Moshe right now is the leader, you're a follower. If Korach takes over, he's going to be leader, you're still going to be a follower. So what's in it for you? He goes, oh, well, yeah, but I swore I would join them. There's no righteous indignation. All of a sudden, real righteousness. But I swore. It's like the guy says, I'm not going to rat on my buddies. You get caught doing something illegal in high school. You go, who did it with you? I'm not going to rat on. All of a sudden, you to cheat on the test or to do drugs that you're willing to do, but to rat on your buddies that you're not willing. All of a sudden, we have our principles. Even in prison, they have principles. If you're certain crimes, they beat you up in prison. If you come in, if you're a child molester, they destroy you in prison. Right? Yeah, listen, we're fine, upstanding murderers and armed robbers over here. What are you throwing these lowlifes in with? There's a certain line. Sometimes people say, you calling me a liar? Right? Sometimes the thing about lying. You ever notice that? In the Westerns, these guys are sitting around a table. You call me a liar? Well, you're a drunk, you're a womanizer, you're a thief. Why wouldn't you be a liar? There's a certain line. No, but I'm not a liar. You call me a liar? Yeah, I'm calling you a liar. Of course I'm calling you a liar. Which word didn't you understand? So Korah, he says, yeah, but I swore that I would join them. I swore that I'm going to join them. So what does Mrs. Bowen say? She says, listen, I'll get you out of it. Now you just leave it to me. So she gives him some wine to drink. She feeds him, gives him some wine. He falls asleep, and she puts him in the back of the tent. The next day, when Korach and his followers came along, so she stood outside the tent and exposed her hair. She stood outside the tent with her hair exposed. And when Korach and his men came closer, they saw, right, there's an unsneous woman over there, right? And they wouldn't look, so they left. On Ben Pelas wakes up, and by the time he wakes up, Korach and his men are all swallowed. So he got out of trouble. His wife saved him. That's on Ben Pelas. Okay, now I want to take this a little deeper. You'll notice, look what Korach says to Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to come back to this in a second. Look what Korach says to Moshe Rabbeinu in the fourth line from the top. Vayikalu al Moshe val Aaron, vayomer aleihem. Rav lachem, you've taken too much position. You've taken too much authority. Ki kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim. The entire congregation is holy. Uvesocham Hashem. The entire congregation is holy. What makes you holier than anybody else? Umadua tisnasu al kal Hashem. Why are you lording yourselves and promoting yourselves over the congregation of Hashem? How did you come off taking these positions? Now, let me ask you a question, gentlemen. I'll show you something interesting. Let me ask you a question. What would you say is the sign of Kedusha of the Jewish people in general? Where is the sign of Kedusha of the Jewish people? It starts from the earliest age for males. Bris Milah, right? The Bris Milah. That's the os al brischa shechasamta b'Yisrael, the bris that you've sealed into us. That's the covenant of Bris Milah. Now watch this. In the same pasuk where he says, look at the words Rav lachem, ki kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim. Okay? So take a look at the word lachem, Rav lachem. It's the fifth line from the top. What's the last letter of the word lachem? Mem. It's a mem sofis, but a mem sofis interchangeable. Look at the last letter of the next word is what? Ki. Ki is a yud. Lachem, ki. What's the last word of the next word? Lamed, and the last word is a hey. Mem, yud, lamed, hey is milah. So right in the pasuk where he's talking about them being kedoshim, the Jewish people are holy. We're all holy. We've all had bris milah. Why are you any better than us? Ki kol eila kulam kedoshim. Another one of those little coincidences, right? So kol eila kulam kedoshim uvesocham Hashem. So there's an incredible medrash here. The medrash says Korach's got a problem because Korach says, we all know we're all holy, but everybody knows Moshe Rabbeinu is holier. Everybody knows Moshe Rabbeinu's guy is higher. He was up on the mountain. He didn't eat for 40 days. Everybody knows who Moshe. Korach's not a fool. He knows who Moshe Rabbeinu was. So how could Korach go and make a claim? Well, we're all holy. So the first thing Korach has to do is he's got to do something about Moshe Rabbeinu. Take a look at the next pasuk. Vayishma Moshe vayipol al panav. Moshe hears and he falls forward. In despair, he falls on the ground. Falls on his face on the ground. He falls forward. So there's a medrash here. You know what the medrash says? They spread a rumor about Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was seen alone with a woman, and that all the men in the Jewish people, you know, the laws of the sota, the woman who's isolated and her husband warns her and then she drinks the water and if she's guilty she dies. All the men then said to their wives, don't be alone with Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what the medrash says. I want to ask you a question. Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife. Moshe Rabbeinu was up on the mountain. What kind of ridiculous rumor is that? And why is Korach spreading a rumor like that? He spread a rumor. So the answer is, because Korach understands, and we know this we could experience and relate to today very well, because somebody's got a reputation, a sterling reputation. The first thing Korach's got to do is even out the playing grounds. You know, Frank Layden was a basketball coach. He once said, where else but the NBA can you see the greatest basketball players in the world all together under one roof and Michael Jordan above it? Right? They're all good, but some are gooder than others, as George Orwell might have said. So, you know, we're all holy. Yeah, but Moshe's a lot holier. So the first thing we got is got to break that aura of holiness. We got to crack through that. How does Korach do that? To go and say, hey guys, I suspect Moshe Rabbeinu is a womanizer, that's not going to work. So what I would imagine Korach did was probably one day after davening, he probably started talking to somebody in shul. He said, listen, Zalman, can I speak to you for a second? You know, something's bothering me, you know. Yesterday I was passing by Moshe Rabbeinu's tent. You know what, forget it. I don't want to say anything. You know, forget it. Never mind. No, I have to. Yeah. I don't know, you know, I saw a woman, she had a halachic question, and it, you know, forget I said anything, Zalman. Forget it. I can't even believe. No, forget about it. No, I have to. And it just seems to me like she might have been in that tent just a little bit long. How can I say such a thing? But it did seem to me a little bit longer than, you know, I mean, okay, that's all you need. That's all you need. Then there's that third guy at the back table who's putting away his tefillin, pretending not to listen. You know, he's the guy who's hearing every word, like, you know, and he's wrapping it and unwrapping it like, this is a good one. And there he is. And he's there. And then he says this, you know what I heard? I heard Moshe. So a married woman. That's all you need. And today all you need is for schmutz somebody on the internet. All you got to do is push one button. That's all it takes to destroy a person's life. That's all it takes today. That's why, gentlemen, you live in a tough world now. You got to be good to everybody. Don't get anybody upset because they could just take you out just like that. Don't get anybody upset. Don't take anybody's parking space. Don't cut anybody off in traffic. Don't do anything wrong to anybody because that's all it takes. It doesn't take much. People could first what you like that. Number one. Number two, what if he would turn around and say to Korach, how dare you? Watch how good Korach was. This guy's good. I mean, this guy's really good. What if he turned around and say, how dare you? How dare you imply Moshe Rabbeinu with a married woman? Zalman, do you really think that's what I meant? I meant that, you know, in the allegorical relationship between the metaphorical relationship between the Jewish people and God, God's the husband and the Jewish people are the wife. I meant, how could Moshe Rabbeinu go and take the wife, the Jewish people, as a leader over the Jewish people? That's what I meant symbolically. But the guy with the tefillin over there didn't hear that part. No, that part, he doesn't listen to symbolism. He's running around already. He's ready. Hey, he sent over. He must have sent a WhatsApp to about 100 people already. Moshe Rabbeinu made his day. Made his day. So now that what he's done is he's successfully ripped down Moshe Rabbeinu. He's brought Moshe Rabbeinu down to everybody else's level. Nobody may believe it, don't believe it. The fact that you're even talking about it, where there's smoke, you know the old saying, where there's smoke, there's a kid doing weed. That's the old saying. It didn't get there by itself. So, now Moshe Rabbeinu is back on level. He's leveled the playing ground. Okay, now, what did she do? So listen to this. It's very interesting. I wondered the following. I had the question. I saw this medrash. She went out there and she let down her hair. Rapunzel, let down your hair. Right, we don't know what her name was, though. Maybe Razel, not Rapunzel. But it says Mrs. Own Ben Pellis. She lets down her hair. Okay. Why? Because they're all a bunch of holy people. She knows that. Ooh, men from men. Ooh, see no evil. Yeah, you're not allowed to look at things. Rebel against the leader, that's fine. Right? Start an overthrow and deny the entire Torah. But chas v'shalom, to go look at a woman who's okay. So I had one question. Why'd she let down her hair? It would have been easier to just go like this. Pull up her sleeve, that's all. Just pull up, she's not allowed to see a woman's elbow. That's all it would have taken. Hi, guys. Right? That's all. Why'd she have to stand out there letting down her hair? So there's got to be a depth to it. So I think the pshat is like this. There's an interesting Gemara here. There's a Gemara that says there's a woman named Kim. There's Gemara, if anybody wants to look it up, it's a tractate Yuma on Daf Mem Zayin, page 47. You can look this up if you want. There's an interesting Gemara here. The Gemara says there's a woman named Kimchis. And this woman named Kimchis had 7 sons who served as Kohen Gadol's. Interesting. 7 sons. Each one got disqualified for a day or for whatever period, became Tameh. His brother took over. She had 7 sons who became Kohen Gadol's. Now, what was Korach after? What did Korach want? He wanted, what's that? Power. He wanted specifically to be good, specifically to be the Kohen Gadol. His fight was with Aaron. Aaron's the Kohen Gadol. I should be the Kohen Gadol. He wants to be the Kohen Gadol. So the sages said to this woman, Kimchis, what did you do? You obviously did something that you merited to have 7 sons who were Kohen Gadols. Now what is it that you did? So Miss Kimchis, she said, in my entire life, the walls of my house never saw the braids of my hair. That means she never exposed her hair in her house. Even though a married woman by letter law is allowed to, a husband is allowed to see her hair. Married woman's husband is allowed to see her hair, but when she's married, nobody else is allowed to see her hair. And in the house, she was so tsanua, she was so modest in the home. By the way, men have to be modest also. The Gemara says that somebody died. So a man died, so somebody got up to eulogize him. And he said, ooh, this man was tsanua be'orchosav. He was very modest in his behavior. I don't mean modest, humility over here. Modest meaning very discreet. He was very discreet in his behavior. So one of the sages said to him, did you ever go into the bathroom with him and to see how he sat in the bathroom? Because that defines if a person's discreet or not, how discreet you are, how modest you are, how tsanua you are. I mean, sometimes people go to the bathroom and you sit down in the bathroom like Tarzan, right? That's not saying, I'm in the bathroom now, walk around, there is a level of even going to the bathroom where you expose as little of yourself as possible. The halacha says even when a man gets dressed or undressed, he should do it in a discreet way as possible. Stand in front of a mirror with his underwear on, flexing his muscles, admiring himself. It should be done as discreetly as possible. That's what the halacha says. So she said that her merit to have 7 sons who were Kohanim Gedolim was because the walls of her house never saw the hair of her head. Well, that tells us, I don't know why, how, or what, that there seems to be some sort of opposite force between being a Kohen Gadol and hair. The less hair, the more Kohen Gadol. The more hair, the less Kohen Gadol. So it's like the idea being, by the way, what is the connection? The connection is that the Kohen Gadol went to the place that is most discreet. He went to the most hidden place, which is what? The Holy of Holies. Since the Kohen Gadol goes into the most hidden, discreet, tsanua place, so the merit of the mother, that she's discreet and tsanua, that brings about a son who's going to go into the most tsanua place. She had 7 of them. So now we understand why Mrs. On Ben Pellis was doing this. She understood, what does Korach want? Korach wants to be the Kohen Gadol. What's the green kryptonite for the Kohen Gadol? Superman's green kryptonite. What's green kryptonite for the Kohen Gadol? Woman hair. So she stands outside and exposes her hair. The last thing Korach wants to see is hair. If If you see an arm, an elbow, that sort of thing, so maybe, but as soon as he's, not that, and he moves away. That saves her husband on Ben Pelas. Okay, that's idea number one. Idea number two is if you take a look in Pirkei Avos, it's a remarkable statement. We mentioned this yesterday. It's a remarkable statement here. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos talks about love. The Mishnah says like this. First, the Mishnah says, any love that is dependent on an external factor, if the factor is removed, then the love is going to dissipate. Guy loves a girl. Somebody once said, if you love a girl for her bank account, you will soon lose interest, right? So if a what do you call it? If a guy loves a girl because she's pretty, that at a certain point that comes to an end. At a certain point that comes to an end, usually about 3 days after you're married. And the what do you call it? Somebody once said they found a food that cures romance. There's a certain food, a magical food that cures romance. It's called wedding cake. So the what do you call it? It says if your love is dependent on external factors, once the factor is gone, the love is going to disappear. And if it's not dependent on external factors, it's a spiritual love, then it'll never be gone. So the Mishnah gives an example. Stay with this. Mishnah gives an example. What's a love that's dependent on external factors? Amnon and Tamar. What was the story of Amnon and Tamar? Amnon was the crown prince of Dovid HaMelech. He was his first son. And he had a half-sister who was beautiful. And what he did was he duped her into a room, and he violated his sister. He violated her. She begged him. She said, don't do this. Even the biggest lowlifes don't do something like this. And if you go to the king and ask him, well, he'll let us get married. No, he goes and he violates her. And after he violated her, the Nach says, whatever his love was, he hated her more afterwards than he ever loved her. Okay? And eventually he gets killed. Not by Dovid HaMelech, by her brother. And a love that is not dependent on external factors is the love between Dovid and Yehonasan, Jonathan, Shaul's son, where Yonasan was willing to do everything in his power, even though he was the crown prince. He did everything in his power that David should become the king. Then the Mishnah says, any machlokas, this is a dispute that is for the sake of heaven, the purpose of the dispute will sofa leiskayim. And if it's not going to come to, it won't achieve what the goals are. And then it gives an example. What's a machlokas that's l'shem shamayim? Hillel and Shammai. All the disputes between Hillel and Shammai are l'shem shamayim. And a dispute that's not l'shem shamayim is Korach and his congregation. So first of all, I mean, the commentaries ask, why does it say Korach and his congregation? His dispute wasn't with his congregation. His dispute was with Moshe Rabbeinu. So why does it say, it should say Korach and Moshe? But it says Hillel and Shammai. So what's the parallel to Hillel and Shammai? Korach and Moshe. But it doesn't say Korach and Moshe, it says Korach and his congregation. So one of the answers is because Moshe was L'Shem Shemayim. Korach wasn't. What about Korach and his congregation? There was probably infighting there too. No, I'll be number 2 on the list. No, I'll be number 3 on the list. I'll be number 4. Probably some infight. Okay. It's a bigger question. Now stay with this, because we're going to go into a much deeper concept. You know, if you've learned enough Gemara or Mishnah or whatever it is, they never tell us things that are obvious. Nobody needs to tell us anything obvious. If Pirkei Avos wants to give an example, if you were familiar with Nach, if you're familiar with the written Torah, and I would ask you, what's an example of an argument, the machlokas, that's not a proper machlokas? What would you say to me? Korach. That's pretty clear that this is a dispute that's certainly not what do you call it? Korach's rebelling against Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. So we answered yesterday, well, it wasn't so obvious. Why not? Because he came running around with the tzitzis and the mezuzah, right? Ooh, he's from, this guy's from. Yeah. What about, does the tzitzis need a string of blue if the whole garment is blue? So in order that you're not deceived by Korach, and you think that there was some element over here where he's actually got proper motivation, so it comes along and it tells you, don't worry. None of this was with proper motivation. It was not l'shem shamayim, no matter how even if he spoke Aramaic. None of it had to do anything with l'shem shamayim. Okay. But then we have a different problem. Because it tells you got a situation where some guy violated his sister. Then he hated her. Now, if you were familiar with that story in Nach, and I'd say to you, give me an example of a love that was not motivated with very spiritual causes. If you knew the story, you'd say immediately Amnon and Tamar, right? So why does the Mishnah need to tell me that? That is so obvious. If you would ask me, where was there a love that was dependent on an external factor? The Nach says openly, he loved her because she was beautiful, violated her, and then hated her. So then, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Okay. So why did the Mishnah bother telling us that? I'm going to tell you something remarkable. We know there's going to be a Mashiach. Now, where does Mashiach come from? Let's trace Mashiach. We know he comes from two nations. What are the two nations? Anybody know that? We just had it on Shavuos. What are the two nations?
Dovid he
comes from the house of Dovid. And he comes from, what about on the mother's side? On the mother's side, the father's side, he comes from David, from Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda specifically. And on the mother's side, he comes from Moab, from Rus, the Moabite. Okay. Now, let's trace this a little bit. The first thing we find, let's take a look at from the house of Yehuda. What do we find? Well, Yehuda meets a lady at the crossroads, and he solicits her services, and it turns out it's his former daughter-in-law, and she gets pregnant, and she has two children from which the Messianic line is going to come, right? She has Peretz and Zerach from Yehuda. I mean, honestly, the Medrash says, well, technically she could marry him, but as the English would say, the whole thing looks dodgy, right? He saw her, and the Medrash says, well, he was pushed by the angel to marry her so that they have the children. I mean, you could have just had a shidduch. Could have introduced Yehuda to a nice Beis Yaakov girl, and the Mashiach could have come from there too. Why did it have to be that he meets some girl who's pretending to be a harlot on the side of the road, and then it turns out, and when you look back, it was all kosher. And she even said to him, yes, I've immersed, everything is fine. Okay, that's on the father's side. Then you get to the mother's side. Where's the mother's side? It starts out with a convert, Rus, who, what happened with Rus? So Rus converts. Now, you go from Yehuda and Tamar, so the next stage is where the Davidic line and the Moabite line meets. Now, where does this line meet? It meets when Boaz marries Rus. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So what happens? Boaz marries Rus. Rus goes down at midnight to the granary where Boaz is there alone, decked. She's dressed to kill, and then Boaz understands that. First of all, this whole thing looks kind of. He wakes up in the middle of the night. There's a woman there. Whoa! This is the head of the Sanhedrin. That doesn't usually happen. We're not at a frat party here. And all of a sudden there's a woman there. And then they have a raging debate the next day. There's a raging debate. What happens at the debate? A Moabite can convert into the Jewish people, cannot convert, can convert, can't convert, can convert, can't. No, only the men can't convert, the women could convert. There's a whole discussion. And Boaz convinces the Sanhedrin that he can marry her. And he marries her. And the next morning he dies. They were married for one night. Now, I want to ask you a question, honestly, between me and you. Imagine you're sitting at a table and two guys are arguing over a piece of meat. It's kosher, it's not kosher, kosher, not kosher, kosher, not kosher. And the guy who says it's kosher convinces the other guy that the guy who says it's not kosher, he convinces him it is kosher. And he takes one bite and he chokes to death. Now, what would your reaction be? Honestly, even if you were not the most cynical among us, what would your reaction be? I guess not. Better check that hechsher again. I guess you're wrong. So Boaz says, you could marry her, can't marry her. Could marry her, can't marry her. Boaz marries her. Next morning he dies. I mean, even, guess not. Guess not. And what happens? She has a child. Has another child. And that child becomes David HaMelech. The child becomes King David. Oh. And then King David has a guy who's married to a beautiful woman, And he sends this guy off to war to get killed. Right? Uriah Achiti. And then he takes his wife. Oof. And the prophet comes over and even castigates Dovid HaMelech. That wasn't nice. That's all. It wasn't a sin, but it certainly wasn't nice. Sending off husbands to get killed so you can have their wife is definitely not nice. Certainly for Dovid HaMelech. And then they have a son, and their son is Shlomo. And then Mashiach comes from there. I mean, isn't that strange? The entire messianic line, touch it where you will, something looks dodgy. These are just not the type of relationship. Well, yeah, this is a woman at midnight, and this is an argument, and this is a man getting killed, and this is a harlot. And nothing, not one of them was a regular straight out shidduch. Hi, what's your name, Razel? What's your Kalman Zalman? Let's get married. Not one of them. So, well, what happened over here? What happened over here? So there's a Kabbalistic idea. I don't know the first thing about it. I'm just telling you what the Kabbalists say. I've never studied Kabbalah. I can tell you I'm quoting. I also don't know anything about airplanes. I can tell you they fly. It doesn't mean I know anything about airplanes. So I'm just telling you a Kabbalistic concept. The Kabbalistic concept is that the soul of the Mashiach, the neshama of Mashiach, is such a lofty neshama. Can't ask me any questions on this, gentlemen. What I tell you now, you can't ask me. I mean, you can tell me, but then I have to shoot you if but I can't. No questions. I'm just telling you a concept. The neshama of Mashiach is so lofty. There are forces, spiritual forces, called the chitzonim, the kochos hara, the forces of evil, the Death Eaters, and they object to this neshama coming into the world and carrying out its task of eventually becoming the Mashiach. If they had exposure to this neshama, somehow, some way they could interfere with the process. So the neshama, there's only one thing that could be done. They could be deceived. The neshama of Mashiach could be camouflaged. And it could be camouflaged in such a way that it's sent and filtered through relationships where the relationship on paper doesn't look so good, even though technically it's okay. So when these forces of evil see that that's where the neshama, well, nothing good could come from there. She's a harlot. Or pretending to be one, even that's bad. Nothing good could come from there because she's a Moabite. Nothing good could come from there because he sent his husband off to die. That's the way the neshama is hidden, and it's what do you call, filtered all the way through until eventually that neshama is going to reveal itself. And that's the only way it could avoid it. It uses a deception and camouflage in order to avoid these forces interfering with it. Now, Dovid HaMelech has a son. The first son is Amnon. What do you think his main goal in life is? There's one goal he has.
Become king?
To become king, and on a spiritual level, to be a continuation in that chain of bringing Mashiach, where it's going to come to the house of David. He also knows that there's a tradition that neshama has to be hidden in kind of questionable relationships. So what does he do? He sees a woman named Tamar. Now, to marry her be a problem, because then it's not a questionable relationship. So what does he convince himself, or at least what do we think he might convince himself? If I do this in a way that's a little bit dodgy, then that'll be a way of continuing that messianic line. So what does he do? He goes and violates her. And we might think that his intention was l'shem shemayim, that he had proper intentions, all to disguise and hide the neshama of Mashiach. And what does the Nach tell us? Nach tells us that was not the intention. It was simply because he was infatuated with her. He didn't want to wait, you have to wait to marry her properly. He was infatuated with her, and then after he violates her, he hates her even more than when he first got involved, than the love. Why does the Mishnah tell us what would seem to be obvious? Because it wasn't so obvious. Because you might think that his motivation was a proper motivation. And therefore the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos needs to say, no. That what Amnon did to Tamar had nothing to do with the spiritual idea of the hiding the neshama of Mashiach. And that's why he ends up hating her even more than he loved her. Because as soon as he finishes with her, he himself realized, this happens in life also, anytime a person does something selfish, no matter what we convinced ourselves in advance, once we've done something selfish, then we feel yucky because we realize, you know what, the reason I didn't share had nothing to do with the reason that I said it's only because I was thinking about myself, and then you feel yucky. And as soon as he violates her, what he realizes then is he just took himself out of the running of being the line of Mashiach, because that kind of behavior, he can't be one of the ancestors of Mashiach, and therefore he hates her even more. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which seems to be obvious, right? It seems to be obvious. The Mishnah is not obvious at all. The Mishnah is telling you, don't think that his motivation was that pure motivation. The motivation was purely selfish motivation. Okay, I was told we have to stop because there's those who are going to go to the base. Where did Jay connect?